about 1 minute. You're live.
We're live now.
So is it okay if I
need to go into the public view.
just open the way?
Hi, world. Life, health is good. I didn't attempt to stream in HD, and I think that's probably for
Frank, should I be here for that, or should I be here? What?
If you want to be in the live stream, you should like kind of be over here.
Okay.
Why don't you guys move the podium out of the way? Can you? Does it move?
It's fine.
Okay.
All right.
We're in our seats. You know, I don't know what more you want from us.
Oh, I just thought you were out of this frame. That's what he was saying. Sorry.
Awesome.
Oh, here we are live.
Working for you?
It's showing up on my YouTube.
There's like a 5-second delay.
Yeah, it's kind of freaking me out.
Wait a second. Cool.
Good.
Yeah, I think we are golden.
Okay.
Scott, go ahead and start us. Awesome.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us here today for our roundtable presentation about the Great Debate and our work that we're doing at Chico, and as it's also manifested in several community colleges. My name is Justus, and I'm the coordinator of the Chico Great Debate at the Chico campus. But I'm also we're going to go down the line. Everybody can introduce themselves real quickly before we get started.
My name is Deborah McCabe, and I'm a lecturer at Cal State Chico.
I'm April Kelly, and I'm a lecturer at both Butte College and Cal State Chico.
I'm Shimp, and I'm a lecturer at Butte College and Shasta College.
And I'm Ryan Guy, and I lecture both at Chico State and Butte College.
So whether you are online, in person, or viewing this in the future, in which case I hope the future is super awesome, we welcome you to our presentation today. How this will work is that I'm going to real quickly go through an outline of what the Chico Great Debate is, and then we are simply going to open it up to reflections and commentary from our panel about how it's worked to expand the event at Chico and how it's worked to export it to different campuses. So we're going to flip through a few visuals here. So the Chico Great Debate is sponsored through the First Year Experience program and the Communication Studies program at CSU Chico. This particular panel is actually partially brought to you by another important program at Chico, and that's the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. Thank you so much for funding this presentation, part of our travel, and we hope that we're doing you proud. So, and community colleges and at the university in general, we're faced with a set of problems. And principal among those problems to the oral communication courses and a variety of other courses. Our particular event is on this semester is on the 11th of April, and we invite you to come see us. If you come see us, we will make you feel special. We'll take you around some debates and experience what we think makes a big difference for the students. There are over 2,000 people that participate over the course of the semester. Part of Shasta, but it's really students that do the lion's share of the work. So if you're thinking about starting a program like this and think, oh my God, I don't want to work another 100 hours a week, the truth is students do most of the work, and they're really in the classroom and the broader community. And I have all these assessment results in both narrative form and think about themselves as community leaders. If you're interested in building a program like this at your community college, at your university, anywhere that you're at, come see us and talk to us. We have resources. Part of what we're doing right now, the sort of model that we're on board for, is outreach, where we see how this can be built up from a small number. We started with 180 people, now we're at 2,000 people. These programs almost always start small and then grow rapidly. And how it's modelable on a community college campus or virtually any other campus.
Well, I'll go ahead and State when the Great Demand started teaching at Butte. Students participate in both argumentation and participating in Chico State. That said, since we've done it, it's been largely successful in leaving my classes with a larger sense of efficacy. So I'll talk more about it.
To manage. And I was also, like Ryan said, a little concerned about the logistical issues, but the students have handled that really well for the most part. Some of the things that I probably could have anticipated, but have found to be, because we're in the process of expanding the program, so I took 3 sections last semester, and you took how many? 2, yeah, and this coming semester there will be a total of 12 sections, so a lot more in spring. And some of the things that we kind of intuitively knew were going to be issues, but maybe turned out to be larger issues, were generating enthusiasm for the event, and also students' communication apprehension. So students were a little bit reluctant at first to participate. They saw the event, especially when you're talking about it on day 1, as like a hoop they have to jump through to complete at school, just another assignment. And so I spent a lot of time in my class explaining to them what they're going to get out of it, so that they feel really excited by it. My reflections, my data, my assessment would actually suggest that they have a really positive outcome. I had 2 students out of the 75 students last semester who did not enjoy the experience, which means 73 students found it to be worthwhile and meaningful, which is huge and amazing. So a lot of encouragement in terms of the enthusiasm, and I spent a lot of time telling them what they're going to get out of it, so that they want to participate, and trying to get them excited about the topic. And also their communication anxiety tends to be higher at a community college, so more practice in class than maybe I would do at the university, even more, and a lot of one-on-one, and just a lot of trying to build their confidence, because they are nervous to even show up at the event and interact with people. It's even makes them even more nervous to get on a stage and talk in front of 50 to 100 people. So I send students who are ready to the speaking events, like super confident, and then everyone else I spend a lot of time encouraging their confidence, and they do seem to, for the most part, come back with a sense of confidence as well. They're also really worried. This is something that surprised me. Some of them, not all of them, about standing out somehow. They're afraid that they're gonna, people are gonna notice, because our students are going to an event with university students, that somehow their speeches won't be as good as the students from the university, or somehow someone will be like, you're from community college, and that obviously doesn't happen, and their speeches sometimes are even better. So those students who speak, they're like, our speeches were just as good, if not better. So they get a huge boost in their confidence for it, which is why we're actually looking at the persistence rates and the transfer rate. So.
Yeah, April and I are working together right now. We were able to gather a lot of the data that we have through institutional research at Chico, but as we're working on incorporating Butte College students, one of the things, and I mean, it was a long process to even figure out who it is that we should talk to at Butte as an institution. But we eventually tracked that person down. We have a meeting on Thursday to try and basically label those students in the system, so that we can track how many of them transfer, at what rate, what's, do you see an uptick in grades? Maybe they have the worst experience in the world and drop out. We don't know, but figuring out that from an assessment perspective is key. But it's a hurdle too, to even figure out who to talk to sometimes.
Yeah, it was. And we are lucky that our department, right, Ryan, has been doing assessment about communication apprehensive. At least it's one of the components. And so we have an opportunity to compare the students who were going to the Great Debate versus all of the other students in however many sections, which we're lucky that we already had that assessment in place, so it'll be a nice thing to look at for us too.
Briefly to follow up on one thing April said, I heard some of the same fears, especially from my debate students, when I told them that, okay, well, a few of you are going to have to debate Chico State students, fearing that, going in and doing it and coming back, and then in our debrief, having those students say, oh, well, that wasn't that bad at all. And some students even mean, well, maybe I should transfer to Chico State after all, because if I can do this, then I surely can do that as well. Yeah. So you hear that kind of feedback.
I've definitely had students come to me and say they feel more confident. I mean, that's them self-reporting that they feel more confident and more ready to transfer and they're less nervous about transferring as a result directly of that interaction with those students. So I think it's pretty powerful. And it's going to be on my assessment for spring, so I know how they feel about it.
I should intervene real quickly to say that we we run our program, and Butte College comes in as part of our program. Shasta runs their own sort of standalone program, as actually does Chabot College. Christine Warda heads that up out there, started on her own, got a little bit of support, and made that happen. So there are really a couple of different models for how this would work. But before we get too far in, I was hoping that we could hear from Deb a little bit, because she was the person that was sort of in the middle of it when we went from having 180 students to having 2,000 students, was in all of those faculty meetings with the 132 instructors, heard and voiced some of those same concerns, and has helped make the event better as we have improved it. But at the same time, she's seen things fall down too and not work well, and I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about that experience.
Sure. I wanted to, because I don't have as much of the community college connection when I've taught at Butte. It was before they became involved with the Great Debate. So my perspective is purely on, the home campus of where it came from. And I was in on it from the very beginning, although I wasn't the person who was coordinating the program. And we've played around also with trying to tap into the reactions. There's been some built-in assessments, there's been a survey, there's been a reflection piece. Those are programmatic, so those are coming out of the first year experience folks who are running it, but there's also always been this sense that in our classroom we should also be doing some kind of follow-up, some kind of debrief or data collection or reflection or something, so it wasn't just we went over there, we spoke, and now we're moving on. So those are some of just the logistical, practical things that have come up over this learning curve. What was the second thing? I'll move on to the third thing because I'm blanking on the second thing. The third thing is really another comment that Zach made early on, and for me this is the most important one. You talked about the challenge of integrating a program like the Great Debate into that has a curriculum that's already, at least on the small group communication side, it's a really packed curriculum, very, very packed class. And here we come with this other event, and it's related, small group communication, civil dialogue, civic action, civic engagement, collaboration, all that, they're related. And it's not smooth yet. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this over the last 6 years. You get involved with something like this and you do a lot of thinking and you do a lot of talking about it, and your significant other is just tired of listening to that drive the structure much more effective if we broaden it and look at, it's been years to get there, to get to that realization. It's just kind of embarrassing. It's a different lens. It's just a shifting of the lens. They're doing something about a real world issue. And then also speaking about what they're doing, hurdle that we've had the learning curve about, and I think hopefully we can meld them a little.
Well, I teach up at Shasta, and one of the sort of difficulties that they face is where Butte is near enough to Chico that they can bring students over and sort of collaborate on that. Shasta is about 70 miles away from Chico, and so
promising about a program like this is, a lot of the pushes for increased civic engagement, student engagement, academic engagement take the form of service learning, and we all know what some of the obstacles to mass service learning are, as you just saturate your community and everybody's fatigued, and it's really hard to do it on a grand scale. And so I think that this is a way to build in small moments of active engagement with the community without overburdening that community. Because in Chico, we, as an institution, we have a huge push on service learning and community engagement, and so our community tends to get fatigued pretty fast. But this is a way to still get them in there experiencing that level of engagement at the ground level, at the first year level, without burdening the community even further.
That's a really good point. Our assessment results consistently indicate that when the students see somebody there that they don't recognize as another student, and I mean most of the people at the event are students, but at the same time the Republicans and Democrats are there registering voters and talking to students about issues. We always are inviting in different interest groups. Every semester the Great Debate has a different theme. So like last semester the theme was mental health, and so we invited in different people that had a stake in mental health. The semester before that it was water and agriculture, so the Farm Bureau had a booth at our exposition, as did the Butte Environmental Council. So the students then see somebody there that they don't recognize, and they think, oh, this is a community member, so this matters. This is different than my normal life. And then that clearly seems to mean something to them, regardless of what institution they're from. But the thing is, Deb's right. The university is not only physically embedded, but it's sort of grafted into every part of the community. But this is a one-day deal. You know, we show up, we sort of invade the city plaza and the city council chambers for one day, and then we're done. So nobody even has other than us really has a chance to get exhausted, you know, because they're there for a couple hours, they see that, the sun's shining, they talk to a couple hundred students, register some voters, get some people signed up for some volunteer work, everybody goes home. It's as far as the community goes, it's a sort of quick hit, high impact practice. It's really allowed us to build a lot of connections with the community. Oh, you know what? Jason Ames just chimed in on the live stream from Chabot. He says, it's Jason Ames. Hi everyone. One of the issues we've had at Chabot was some apprehension from the community about the word debate. Did anyone else experience this, and how was it rectified?
Well, I know that there was some concern with that at Shasta as well, right?
Yeah, so like I said, sometimes the debate format was just hard to implement at Shasta. They've only done it 2 semesters there at this point. And the first semester they tried to have the debate format, and part of that was difficult due to they only offer one section of argumentation and debate up there, and they don't have a forensics team at this time, which for Chico State and Butte, we often draw from those sections of classes and those students. And so for the last semester when they did it, they didn't have the debate style, but more of a panel discussion where they had different people come in and present, and there wasn't necessarily the specific resolution, but the general theme on which they were speaking.
Well, and part of the problem was a little bit of misunderstanding between the Chico State students that went to help out and what was going on there. We had a couple of our open members of our debate team go to Shasta to debate students that were in their introduction to argumentation and debate class, and you can kind of imagine a little bit about how that debate might have looked like. And so I think as a result from that, there's been a little apprehension at the Shasta Great Debate to like keep the evening debate going. For those of you that didn't quite understand, part of the way that the Great Debate event works is that throughout the day there tends to be a variety of key things happening, right? And Zach spoke a little bit to this, but there are students from the public speaking classes giving speeches. In Chico, it's at a big outdoor amphitheater. Students from the small group communication classes are giving group presentations about the topic. Students from the debate classes, the argumentation debate classes, are having mini debates against each other. And then there's also Civic Expo presentations that students in the small group classes that happen at that time, as well as kind of like centered focus group type discussions about the topic. In the evening, there's a main event, and we try to get community members to partake in that, specifically people that are stakeholders in whatever issue they are. So for example, when we did the Occupy Wall Street debate, we had a member of one of the local OWS chapters, and we also had a couple Tea Party type people on the other side, paired up with students from the debate team. And we have this big evening event where we clash these ideas together, and we work with the community members beforehand. That said, and Zach could probably speak to this a little bit more, there have been times where the community members have been a little concerned about what really is meant by that debate idea, especially since they're more kind of...
I think that at Chabot, one of the things they're thinking about doing is actually renaming their event to help to rectify that. The event took off real quickly for us to the point where people started to know about it, and then we didn't have to deal with that nearly as much. But it's just one of the ways that what we're trying to do is modular, and it can be adapted differently. Like Tori said, it works very differently at Shasta than it does here. The same principles are the same: civility, course integration, getting students out of the classroom to do something interesting. But the actual form is really flexible. We had a question from our online audience. I'm not sure if we'll have more or not, but do we have questions and comments from our in-person audience too?
I had like a logistical question. How do you choose students who might be doing the presentations or debate? Is it everybody? And then in terms of how does that work with grading if it's a few people that are picked and then other students that are watching?
That's a great question. Do you want to talk about how the small group class works first?
Sure.
At the beginning, it was everybody, I think. It was part of the program, but as it grew, and then we didn't really have the time for everybody to be presenting over there, it became by invitation. And so if you're teaching the small group class where that's not, some small group classes, their output is in the Civic Expo, which is a big display in the plaza where they do trifold science project display boards, and they put information on there that came out of the research. And so some sections are designated to participate in that. The remaining ones are designated as participating via presentations, but the instructors at the very beginning, and this is one of the logistical coordination things, whoever's on the small group coordinating side has to count up how many sections of small group do we have and figure out at first invitation how many groups from your class from your section as an instructor can you invite. And you typically just invite the best presentations, and you tell the students early on, those who give the best presentations are going to be invited. They don't have to come. We give them an opt-out because some students are so apprehensive about it that they would rather not, or they're so busy. And then as those slots start to fill up, you get an eye for how many are left, and you can open it up more and tell people first come, first serve. You can start inviting some other people from your section, but to try to keep it fair, each section at first is entitled to invite one. The keeping it fair part has been one of the hurdles, is trying to figure out, how do we get an equally distributed opportunity for all these students. And then the motivational piece has been a hurdle too. Like, how do we incentivize them to want to come and present? And so that opens the hornet's nest of extra credit, and how much, and how, if only the presenting groups get extra credit, does that mean that there should be an equivalent opportunity to earn the same amount of extra credit points in some other avenue in some of the other sections? So that's been a serious learning curve too.
The extra credit thing, we haven't, to be honest, I think we've done slightly differently several different times, and there's a bunch of us teaching small group at Chico State, so we try to come to a collective understanding at the beginning of the semester about what that's going to be, so that at least it's the same for all the sections. At the community college, I do it slightly differently. So far, the small group class, I've taken small group and public speaking classes. So I personally, and it could just be my experience, found it much easier with the public speaking students. I just invite the students who are the best speakers. I think last semester I invited 11 people and 8 of them spoke. They all gave strong speeches. And a couple of the people just weren't even interested in getting up there. They didn't really need the extra credit. I did give them extra credit for it, and so that made it really easy with the public speaking. With small group, it's a little more difficult, especially at the community college. I had one semester where I didn't ask a single group from one class because the presentations were not up to what I thought the standard should be. That was an issue that I had with that specific class that permeated the whole semester. The next semester I had 2 classes, and I asked 4 groups, and I think 2 of them presented, and they were great because they had the one thing that you will find at
I'll talk about the audience participation too. We've talked about what students are doing there, but we also have all of those students go and just participate and be audience members or be walking around the expo booths interacting with the people who are hosting those exhibits. And in the early days, that was also motivated by extra credits. Like, you can go if you want to earn extra credit, and we just have tried to dampen down that part of it because it gets out of control really quickly with the points, and it starts to skew things. And the more integrated and sedimented the Great Debate became in our curriculum, eventually the agreement was that participation at the event, even if you're just attending as an audience member, is a required component of the class. So we removed extra credit for that, and now there's certain like they have to go and see one presentation, or they have to go and spend a certain amount of minutes at the expo as part of the Great Debate requirement for the course. That's what, in part, raised the whole tracking attendance issue, because to fulfill the requirements, you have to know who was there and who wasn't.
It's treated, the attendance part is treated like its own assignment as part of the Great Debate assignment, and then if they speak, there's an agreement about the extra credit depending on the semester.
So just to clarify, because I know this is a lot to deal with, in each of the classes that participates in the Great Debate, there is a specific oral type presentation assignment that is linked into the event. Typically in the past, it's gone back and forth, but for the public speaking class, originally it was an informative speech. Later on, we've experimented with having the persuasive speech be the event that takes place. Originally in the small group communication class, it was a stakeholder speech where the students presented on an organization or a stakeholder related to the event. And last semester we tried problem analysis speeches from those with varying amounts of failure and success. But those assignments and those presentations are given in the classroom first. So if the topic, as it was a few semesters ago, was immigration reform, and a student was given an informative speech on the type of technology that they want to use to build a border fence, that student would give that presentation in their public speaking class, either at Butte College or at Chico State. And then at that point, after the speech had been given and graded, there would then be different mechanisms to decide if they go to the Great Debate. In public speaking, we've done tryouts in the past at Chico State where students have come in panels, and we've had our forensic students and other TAs and volunteers go in and rank the panels to decide who makes the cut and who doesn't inside there. And then obviously, as April spoke about, there was the process of instructors self-selecting the best panels out of their small group classes. The key thing to understand is that the points for the presentation, the grade is based on what happens in class. In the non-extra credit model, where it's a participation model, we allocate, roughly, I'd say that out of a 1,000 point class, 20 points towards like the participation over the course of the day. That's fluctuated up to 50 and back and forth. And all students are required to participate. Some students would just give their presentations, and other students would watch presentations. And so we have debated amongst ourselves as to whether that is fair, whether the students have to prepare to speak in front of a group deserve something extra, or if being able to give a presentation instead of a watch a presentation is reward enough in itself. And that's a debate that's ongoing, and I think that as you try this at your own institutions, that's something that you could experiment, and we could hopefully come back in the future and discuss those types of things as we work the details of that out.
Other comments, questions?
How do you guys pick your themes, and do you have any, since basically it's a requirement of all sections of these classes, which I'm also assuming are required classes in some part, do you have any resistance from students who come in and realize that this is part of what they're going to have to do for the semester?
Well, I'll speak real briefly to the selection process, but then these folks are better equipped than I am to talk about how that works at the ground floor. So we actually we have a topic selection meeting towards the end of every semester, and we actually have representatives from the city there, usually from the city manager's office or members of the city council that are there. And they oftentimes provide great input for us about what's next in city politics, and we had students say, that's the most boring idea I've ever heard of, quit talking about it right now. So then we figure out something else, but generally we build consensus, and then we find a broad theme with lots of access points.
Yeah.
So like this semester, it's diversity and discrimination. So that allows students to talk about a wide variety of things. We haven't always done a good job with that. Like one of the themes I was the most excited about was water and agriculture, because we're right in the middle of this huge agricultural region in Northern California. It was like, oh, it's going to be awesome, farming families, and we're going to all this community. The students hated it, and so we don't always get that right. I mean, the public work's messy, and that's I guess the blessing and the curse. But these folks can talk about it on the ground.
The topics are the important point is the breadth. The topic has to be broad enough that students can come at it from some point of their own interest. And the water topic, I thought it was going to be deadly. I was, and I had some of the coolest Civic Expo. They don't just present booth things, they also have some sort of activity or something that people can come around and get involved with. I had people doing little kind of sciencey displays about fluoride in the water. I had them put these eggs in different cups of water with different amounts of fluoride, and you touch the egg and the eggshell gets all soft and swooshy in a certain kind of water, so it had the gross factor in it too that was really beautiful, and got people really interested. And then the taxation, I thought that taxation and spending was going to be a dog too. Great presentations, because they could tie the where does the money come from and where does it go to whatever piece of life they are most interested in. I mean, that covers just about everything. Yeah,
I would say definitely having something that's big enough, like you said, and some of it just comes down to how you explain it in class. I mean, the semester and I was even at the meeting when we decided government spending and taxation, and when we talked about it, I was like, this makes sense, but I knew in the classroom I was gonna have to make this sound super exciting, so the way I talked about it in my class, I was like, I know, taxes doesn't sound really exciting, right? But let me tell you all the different things you can do, because it's really broad, and here's how it affects you. You're a student. Are you upset about your tuition? Do you want to be able to, because it was during the Prop 30 fight, and I was like, do you want to be able to go to school next year? Like, do you want to pay twice as much in tuition? So I made it about them, and I just got excited about it. That's how I mean, there's still going to be some people, like I felt like with the water, there was more, it was almost that people got a little bored with the topic, I felt like by the end. Whereas mental health, I think I heard one person say they weren't interested at all. Every other person was like, this is really interesting, and especially once you start talking about one out of 4 people has a mental health issue, so all of a sudden you can like really identify with it. And I think we're also making an effort to pick topics that will work for the community college level too.
Yeah, it's also an opportunity to start a campus-wide conversation about an issue. This semester we chose diversity and discrimination because it's a conversation that our campus needs to have, and we sort of get started and then roll back and then make some progress, and then there's a personnel change, and so we thought, hey, let's get our first year students talking about this in their first year, and then maybe by the time they're seniors, they will have this conversation a lot, and they'll think about this differently on campus. They'll be prepared to have different conversations. So it really does give us a chance sometimes to sort of shape a broader conversation.
One of the things that I'll say is that some of the topics are going to be more difficult for instructors to frame than other topics. Like when we were talking about government spending, it's pretty clear like what the ground is inside of that debate, right? Size of government, spending towards programs versus like more free market solutions, and it's easier to frame that. In the semesters where we've done what I would say are the more controversial topics, such as immigration reform, and this semester with diversity and discrimination, I see my students struggle more with like, wait, what's the debate about on these types of things? I've already had students this semester with discrimination and diversity be like, I don't understand how we debate this. Isn't discrimination bad? Are we going to argue that discrimination is good? Do I have to debate that? And it's about moving into that role of instructor, be like, well, no, but we're talking about like what are the solution steps to these types of things? Should we have affirmative action programs or should we not? Right? What are the solvency steps? So you have to be careful as an instructor early on, particularly with the more hot button issues, to help frame what the ground is for students so they won't struggle. That said, I still had students on the immigration topic that were having highly problematic pieces of rhetoric where they talked about gathering people up in vans and shipping them off to different places and that. And so you do deal with that. You deal with strong, kind of what we would probably argue problematic value assumptions on behalf of our students. But the key thing is to not be afraid of that and to think of that as places.
People that can really play with that narrative about how intimidating it is, and at the same time really highlight communication studies, the role of communication in democracy, going all the way from that really intimidated first year freshmen to, oh, I don't know, the President of the United States giving a speech. I think that would be an awesome tool to add to your arsenal of making this successful, and it seems like it would be a helpful tool for all your instructors.
That's a great suggestion. A big struggle that we all have is explaining the event and what it will mean, what it will look like to the students during the course of the semester, because they think things like, oh, it's a speech, and then the same thing I'm going to do in class, I'll just go and do it some other classroom. And then no, that's not the case. They're going to do it in the city plaza, and there are going to be 300 people there watching, and transients coming by, and community members, and it's going to be messy and dynamic and public and all of those cool things. And so I think having a student perspective piece would be, like you said, a great addition that maybe we could show our students early on. That's something we'll talk to.
Visual.
Yeah.
And not just verbal, but visual, so they actually see and they can see themselves.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that's an awesome idea. And there's another instructor, Kelly Fredericks, who's at Butte College, who's an English professor, and she was involved in this last year. And her and her students did sort of a small scale version of that. So they started putting that kind of stuff together. They were students that were in my class and her class. So she has a smaller version of that, but we haven't done how can we actually make that happen? Because I think it would be a great tool for us. And at the end of every semester, we'd look at them and we're like, these are really interesting, and then we kind of put it away, So
that's a really great suggestion.
Yeah.
One of the things that might work well with that, which also gives us kind of a segue into something else that we do that's useful for other programs that are considering this, is it might be a good thing for one of the other upper division comm classes to dive into and help facilitate that and work with the students. Maybe students that did it as freshmen now could come back as sophomores or juniors and help it. But one of the things I did want to speak on in this is that we use the students that we have throughout our program to help with the Great Debate. So, for example, one of the things that I help do at the Great Debate is moderate and facilitate breakout discussion groups. So we get students together, and what has been great over the last couple of years, is we've had students from our more upper division classes come in and help be moderators in that and get training. So we have an advanced interviewing class, which is like a 300 level class, and we've had those students come in and help with that. And it's been great because it allows students to kind of see it at multiple levels. The other thing that's been really critical to making this event happen has been involvement by our forensics program. And the Butte College, the Chico State Director of Forensics, Sue Peterson, has consistently brought students from her program in to help and watch speeches when we're evaluating them, moderate discussions inside that. So there's a lot of resources that can be available to your program by drawing on different aspects inside of that and using those individuals, and they get pretty into it. And, I mean, I would not be surprised if we asked a few of the forensic students to make videos of the Great Debate, that they would be all over doing something like that. So.
Well, and I would just say I would really encourage that the thing that I think a video like this could get away from is you are all enmeshed in communication studies, and you've participated in speech giving at a high level, as have the forensic students.
True.
I think what the 484 group could do is a great focus group with students that have participated to get their kind of narratives about what they were feeling at the beginning of the semester, which you collect some of that in the assessment data, but really collect a narrative that comes from that true novice. It's so hard for us to shed our experiences and really look at this from that first year student who is not us.
Yeah.
Agreed.
What has your reaction been with community members? Do you have a lot of community members that are audience, or, because again, we're talking about this public sphere that doesn't necessarily exist in the wild, as it were, until we make it happen. So if you want to share your experience about community reactions.
Well, on the whole, it's been overwhelmingly positive. But I mean, the theme that I always try and come back to with this sort of work is that it's messy but rewarding, because that's what being in the public is. And I think it's our obligation as instructors to get our students involved and exposed to that early on, because that regardless of what they do next, that's their work. And our experience, though, I mean, there have been a couple episodes with a handful of community members that have been really difficult and trying. One of our first semesters, there was somebody that we invited to be part of our evening debate event and did not like the format, and we told them, you know, we're not going to modify what we do because you would like to do something else. This is sort of what we're doing. And so he took to his personal blog, which
that we're doing this with the students, because at least in our town, there's a kind of a tension between the students and the rest of the community, not so much the community college students, but the university students. And so there's some myths about the students, and people that I talk to are like impressed that we're out there doing this with the students. They think it's a great idea. It's definitely more positive than negative.
I did, once we moved a portion of it out into the city plaza, which in Chico, the city plaza does have a lot of transients in it throughout the day. Some of my students expressed concern about that, and so I ended up starting to incorporate into the build-up to this some training in how to deal with difficult situations. It's not so much about civil dialogue, it's about dialogue that's kind of a little off, you know, and you don't quite know how to handle it. So I started giving them some advice on what to do if somebody approaches, and at what point do you feel that it's a safety issue, mm-hmm. or at what point do you feel that you can just, you know, distract and deflect, you know, to move the person on. Because there is that potential, because it's out in public, which means that you have to deal with the public. That's what it is in all its glory, you know. But one of our issues, I think, one of the struggles from my perspective of this program is it is supposed to be this big public sphere event, and it's on a Friday during the day, and much of the public is at work. Mm-hmm. So it's mostly students, and then we have some politicos, and we have university personnel, and the occasional, you know, group organization. But it does feel a little weird billing it to students as a big public event, when really mostly it's in public with some public stakeholders, but a lot of the people are not there because they're at their jobs. I would love to get more people there, and in some ways I feel like we should be hitting up or like organizations that have a high level of retired folks or whatever, people who might be available during the day and might be interested in these kinds of issues and interested in talking about them, just to get a little bit more actual foot traffic from actual members of the public, so that the students get the most bang out of that experience, talking to people they don't already know, not even just personally know, but I know kind of who you are because you're a student like me. That's a different thing than, whoa, who's this?
I mean, it does explain why the Tea Party ladies are always there at every event.
They are reliable.
Yeah. One of the things I did want to speak on in relation to that, in addition to getting community involvement, which is great, one of the most important things to make this successful and to make this really link into public sphere pedagogy is the partnerships that you build with the community leaders. We would not be able to do anything near what we do if we didn't have good working relationships with the Chico City Council and the city manager and those types of things. So I think that fostering those relationships and finding ways to make those connections are key. And maybe, Zach, you could just speak on how that relationship's evolved and some suggestions for new programs in doing that as we wrap up.
Yeah, the community, building those community connections, Ryan is absolutely right. It is not just important, it's essential. It doesn't fly without it, because they have access to resources and identification of problems and ideas that we just don't. And so I think a key way to identify community members is almost always to start with those personal connections. Like, for instance, with the Chabot program, when it is started, they reached out to city council members of Hayward that are also connected to the campus. And then from there, they know other people that are also affiliated with city politics, and then it moves from there. One of the things that we've really identified as a possible growth area is advocacy groups, they want to make their voices heard, right? Like that's what they're looking for, is a platform. So when I'm looking for people that are evening debates, they're the first people that I call. I look up to see who's on what side of an issue, where their office is in Sacramento, and I pick up the phone, and if they can, they come out to the event. And those partnerships actually build over time. A guy that came out a couple of years ago, I needed a contact in the hierarchy of the Republican Party for California. So there was a guy that participated in our evening event a couple of years ago, and so I just called him. He remembered who I was, and then that relationship built from there. But identifying those people that you already know through personal professional networks, maintaining those, and then building on those is essential to the success of the event. Also essential to the success is acknowledging all the different people and moving parts that make it possible. I coordinate the event and oftentimes end up as the face of the event, but it's really these folks that are here with me that provide the lion's share of the work in the classroom as former TAs, as current adjunct faculty that are making this work across different campuses, on top of all of these other responsibilities, community members and students that make this possible. And I want to thank a couple of people that have had a special role in making this possible. I already mentioned the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. Students is too important to keep locked in a classroom, so get it outside.
If you're watching online, we're going to post contact information for this guy at the bottom of this so that you can find more about the great debate. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jason basically asked the question that I asked.
Yeah.
Zach, do you go that tagline, by the way?
What's that?
Are you working on that tagline, or just got that on the spot?
That's a tagline that I use. That's my tagline.
Can I move this now, Ryan?
The work of your
Give me
students
1 second.
is
Slow.
Yeah, I thought of that on the spot for the webinar. Yeah.
That's me.
It was given
I feel like a corpse right now.
It was having issues at the beginning, but I felt like it came back on after about 10 minutes
Yeah.
and it started working.
Hi, I'm introduce myself. I'm Amy Mason. I'm over the hill from you guys, and
I thought I overpacked.
Oh, cool.
So,
Which I probably did, but
and so do you guys have stuff posted online?
Yeah, we do. We actually ran a webinar late in the fall that was all about how to start a public sphere program on your own campus. And included that as a toolkit with like spreadsheets and promotional materials and then all that sort of stuff. I'll be happy to do too.